Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, Surah Bani Israel, chapter 17, and we will cover verses 47 to 54 today. The law of resurrection of life outlined. There are a few verses which deal with the life of the hereafter, and they are more of questions and some reply by the Quran, but I thought to expand these a bit further just to create some interest in this aspect. And it is related to what is death and what lies beyond that. These are the references, and this is our contact in case there is any query, question regarding this presentation or any of our past presentations. Recap verses 17, 39 to 46, which we covered in our previous meeting. Allah has provided guidance through the Quran, which is Wahi, so that man can make the correct choices in his worldly life and thus avoid the pitfalls in his life. He should never mix man-made laws with the laws and values of the Quran, otherwise he will not obtain those benefits which are associated with Quranic teaching. And this theme runs throughout the Quran, that do not mix up any other value with the Quranic value system, because this is the way Quran wants that human beings should implement its laws so that their psyche is absolutely pure and has that iman which the Quran has put forward. The Quran is a complete book of guidance, and this fact should not be accepted mechanically. And that is important because a lot of people believe in the Quran mechanically. They do not accept that iman which is explained in the Quran, and as a result, they cannot draw those benefits which are associated to inner conversion towards the Quranic system of Deen. Acceptance should be through rational thinking and reasoning. Only then can it help to acquire that psyche which can work to establish the system of Deen. The whole system of the universe follows the laws of Allah. Man should also use his choice and intent and opt for the Quranic values to bring balance and order into his worldly life, just like the balance and order in the universe. And the Quran draws our attention to the physical laws working in the wider world. Those who follow the Quran can identify those who are not interested in its guidance by employing the signs noted in it. As these are related to the human psyche, hence they need to develop their own selves first in order to judge others using the Quranic criteria. A lot of things of the Quran cannot make sense unless we acquire that self which is developed after acquiring Iman and after doing some solid deeds. Only then some of the things make sense to us. And without acquiring that self, a lot of things in the Quran do not make sense to people. Those who do not consider the Quran to be a complete book of guidance display their antipathy to it through their words and conduct. An overview of today's presentation. On the path of Deen, there will come across some people who may appear to be interested in the Quran, but will have their own vested interests and their loyalties will lie elsewhere. The Quran cautions us by highlighting some signs of their personality. Then there are the people who are not willing to consider the possibility of the life in the hereafter and think that human life ends with physical death. Such people then use sarcasm to promote their own version of the purpose of life, predicated on this assumption that once the physical body dies, there is no possibility of resurrection. And this is the common view held by majority, that the life ends with our physical death. The Quran counters this kind of thinking and states that Allah creates from nothing. For example, the creation of a human being from nothing, and then addresses man at the level of the self to invite him to reconsider his opinion based on rational thinking, reasoning, and evidence. And we know that the Quran puts a lot of emphasis throughout its folds that we should use our cognitive abilities to their extremes. Everything follows laws, and human beings need to bring their unbridled desires, which are termed as shaitan by the Quran, within the domain of the permanent values in order to obtain those benefits of life towards which the Quran repeatedly invites us. Then the Quran guides the students of the Quran to respect the choice of other human beings and to leave them alone if they do not wish to seek its guidance. Very important point. Now let us go to the first verse of today's presentation, 1747. We need to remain aware of the behavior and conduct of others. Nahnu alamu bima yastami'una bihi is yastami'una ilayka wa izhum najwa is yaqulu zalimuna in tattabi'una illa rajulan mashura. When these people come and sit in your assemblies, and it seems as if they are listening to your discussion very attentively, whatever they are in reality hearing, we are well aware of that. So Quran has said that over here that when these people come to the meetings of Mu'mineen, and in this case we can say when the messengers were there, then Quran is saying that they appear to be listening, but in fact they are not. After this, they go and meet with their comrades and hold secret consultations with them and say very contemptuously to the Mu'mineen that you are following such a man on whom someone has cast a spell. And he says insane things. Further reflections on this verse. An important aspect of human attention to detail is noted here. If people are disinterested, then they need to miss vital aspects of any serious conversation. And we experience it in our life as well. For example, if we are attending a lecture and we are not fully attentive, then we will miss many important aspects of that lecture. At the time, these people used to attend meetings with the messenger and appear to be interested while being present there. However, here the Quran has noted that these people do not listen. Instead, their thoughts are somewhere else. If it was a simple case of not listening and then leaving the place, then it would not have been that serious. However, the Quran has pointed to an important aspect of their psyche. They are in fact there to sabotage the establishment of the system of Deen because they come and listen and then go to meet their own companions to share their opinions with them with a view to undermining the efforts of the Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen. And that is an important point. If somebody is not interested in the lecture or maybe goes to sleep, it makes no difference. But the purpose with which they come and then go out and conspire against it, that is the point to which the Quran is drawing our attention. And because system of Deen is a serious business, and Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen were putting in a lot of effort to replace the man-made system so that injustice can be removed and human beings do not suffer. And so it becomes very serious. While they are doing this, the Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen are not yet aware of this activity of theirs. The Quran has summed this up by calling them is yaqulu zalimuna. They are unjust people whose intention is to create imbalance in the world. In fact, they exist in a state of imbalance and disorder and wish this state to continue. They don't want to bring peace and balance into the world. We witness this in today's world. So Quran is asking us to create a very serious psyche which is fully focused on the system of Deen and is not distracted by these people. If these people play dirty and are carrying out intrigues and conspiracy, then one has to get rid of them. A few more comments on this verse. Another important aspect which is implicit in this verse is that it is not about numbers, but it's strictly about the quality of the individuals who come and join the ranks of the Jamaat. Such disruptive people need to be identified quickly and once discovered, using these signs to be asked to leave as they add problems and slow down the efforts. Then the verse points to a potent sign of the psyche of such people. They are scornful and quite frank in expressing their scorn to the Mu'mineen. Because not only that, they go out, meet their own companions who are also like them, and then they come back and pass comments that messenger is insane, our messenger is mad, and they use rude remarks against him and obviously against other Mu'mineen. It is because they think the Mu'mineen are weak and that they can get away with whatever opinion they have and express it at will. And we can see this being expressed in media all across the world, that how they project lies on airwaves. This is good because this is how such people become identified. They say to the Mu'mineen that they are following someone who is bewitched, i.e. the message of the Quran is false and not haq. So when people oppose the Quran and in return they oppose those who are projecting the message of the Quran as a system of Deen and they oppose them, in fact they are opposing Allah. because the students of the Quran are sharing what is given in the Quran as a system. It means the path followed by these people is the right one, while the Mu'mineen are wasting their time by listening to the Quran and its guidance. Now let us go to the next verse, 1748. By following the wrong path, we do harm to our own self. Anzur kaifa zarabu lakal amtala fadallu fala yastati'una sabila. O Rasool, see what kind of things these people are saying about you. Obviously, these words also hurt because, at least in the initial stages when the system is being established and people are sincerely sharing the Quranic message of haqq with others, and somebody passes these kind of remarks, then obviously this is going to affect the psyche of the students of the Quran. It is this very prejudice of theirs due to which they have fallen into this kind of misguidance so that they cannot find the straight path. The one over whose eyes a blindfold of hate and prejudice is tied, how will he see the path which is straight? So they actually harm themselves, but obviously as students of the Quran need more experience, they will understand these things after some time that these guys are actually harming their own self. Because life has to come to end at some point through our death. And then we will see later on that the life of the hereafter is a blank space for such people. It means nothing to them. Further elaborations, taking notice of the kind of accusation and labeling these people resort to, here the Quran has informed us that this path taken by the Mu'mineen will involve confrontations with opponents who will create all kinds of problems. So Quran is actually cautioning us and telling us that on this path, you will come across people like that and how to deal with them. By warning us in advance about what happened in the past in the initial era of Islam and to all the messengers, the Quran is cautioning us not to let these things affect us and to never become distracted from the path. The interesting part is that by doing this, they think they are causing difficulties for others and that somehow this pursuit by the Mu'mineen will come to an end. They are mistaken as they simply do not understand that those who are on this path know that this will take place and is to be expected, hence they will never give up. So if we are forewarned, then we take precautions and we are not disheartened by it. If I know that these guys are trying to distract us from this path, and we know through the Quran that this will happen on this path, then we are not affected. Then by stating, فَدَلُّوا فَلَا يَسْتَطِيعُونَ سَبِيلًا, that they actually misguide their own selves. We are informed that they have misguided themselves and are never going to be able to find the straight path of life unless they give up this way of theirs. Next verse, 1749, unsure about resurrection after physical death. وَقَالُوا إِذَا كُنَّا إِزَامًا وَرُفَةً أَإِنَّا لَمَبْعُوثُونَ خَلْقًا جَدِيدًا. So what they were saying previously, now over here they have come up, the Quran has over here quoted another utterance of theirs, that what they say about the life of the hereafter. These people who declare your statements as being insane, one among them is also that they say that when after death we will be only bones and will decompose into dust, what will we be raised up again anew even after this? And this is very interesting that on one side people are scared of death. On the other side, when the Quran provides us the facts about the life of the hereafter and gives us an option that you have an option to be able to live beyond your death, then people start mocking it and go against it. Further reflections on this verse. Continuing with the same theme of false accusations and name calling to which these people resort to, here the Quran has referred to another important comment of theirs, i.e., that when we are reduced to bones and dust, should we really be raised up as a new creation? Let us look at another verse about human creation. فَقَسَوْنَا الْإِزَامَ لَحْمًا ثُمَّ أَنْشَأْنَاهُ خَلْقًا آخَرَ. What I did was, when I was going through this verse and I wanted to expand it a bit more, for our own guidance, so that we look into those aspects which are associated with our choice and intent right at the time of birth. And this verse is very important, 23:14. in connection with the formation of a baby in the mother's womb, and this is what is explained in this verse, clothed bones with flesh, then we developed out of it another creature. When human beings do not think beyond the animalistic level of existence, the issue of the hereafter does not even arise. So over here, what Quran has done is that it has gone through the fetus and its development within mother's womb, and then says that Anshanahu khalqan akhara, that out of it another creation is created, that is from the animalistic state, then the child becomes a human being with choice and intent. The verse points to this fact that these people do not see the possibility of the continuation of human life beyond death because they are fully focused on the physical aspect of their life. And this is the problem of most human beings, that they think that they are physical just like animals. And they only say that we are just a slightly higher form of animals. And this kind of utterances, we can listen to these kind of comments we can hear if we go to some of the YouTube videos of some top scientists. If our existence is only the physical one, then they are right in proclaiming that following physical death, there can be no further existence. And these bones cannot be resurrected, which is a fact according to the Quran. And this is what the Quran is pointing to our attention, that, okay, you say that these will become bones, but over here, the Quran is talking to the human self because the verses are addressing human self. These bones will not be given another life because there is no need for doing this. Because this physical state is our first stage of our life. And if we are going over to a higher stage, which is the stage of the developed human self, then we really don't require this body. Continuing with this theme, when the Quran drew our attention to a new creation in this verse 23:14, it pointed to the existence of a self. We know it is called nafs in the Quran, which has the traits of choice and intent. Then this verse concluded by stating, فَتَبَارَكَ ahsanul khaliqeen. Allah's creation is the best and most balanced among those who create. What is special about His creation? It has the ability to establish itself, develop, and grow further. And that comes out, these meanings come out of this Tabarakallah. This points to human latent potentials, that this child who is given choice and intent has tremendous potentials, latent potentials within him or her, which need to be brought out. And bringing those out will require the guidance of the Quran. So Quran is providing a choice. If we are living without the Quran, that means we do not have a choice. The only choice we have is that we will die with our physical death. In this verse, the reply which is given by these people is not at the level of the self, but is viewing their existence to be a physical one and not being aware that the Quran is not addressing them as physical beings. So it is not the animalistic side of their self which the Quran is addressing. Quran is addressing that self which has cognitive potentials. Rather is addressing their metacognitive ability. And metacognitive means that is they have the ability to think about thinking. They have the ability to analyze, analytically look at everything which is going on around them and within their own head as well. It is providing them with the choice of living beyond their physical existence, the choice which simply cannot be availed if they are not aware of it. So while human beings are scared of death, fearful of death, and when the Quran gives them an option, some of these people reject that option and want to continue with their own life, which they think will end with death. The issue is that one can allow them to do that, but they also create problems for other human beings, and they create mess and disorder in the world. This also means that these people are quite satisfied with their physical life and its defined successes. And these successes, we have gone through what kind of a successes people think of in the mechanistic way of life, and are unwilling to consider the option of having a life beyond the realm of physical death. Why don't they pause and reflect rather than rejecting it so quickly? Continuing on this verse, in order to understand the continuation of human life beyond the physical realm, the Quran invites us to seek its guidance and then acquire Iman. And for example, we have gone through this verse in our question answer session previously, وَلَكِنَّ الْبِرَّ مَنْ آمَنَ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ وَالْمَلَائِكَةِ وَالْكِتَابِ وَالنَّبِيِّينَ. In order to come to grips with those aspects of human life for which the heavens and the earth are created, and we know this is given in verse 45:22, and which are related to the human self and its expanse, we need to accept Iman in Allah, being possessor of a higher self. The continuation of life in the hereafter, the forces of Allah which operate in the word, the books, and the Anbiya. So the important thing is that after having recognized that we have a self, and this aspect runs throughout the Quran from beginning to end when it addresses those who are seeking guidance, that you have a self and this self needs to develop itself by having a higher self as a model, and in this case, Allah's attributes, divine attributes, serve as a higher self. From this, it is clear that those who do not want this route or do not acquire this Iman, all these aspects, including the concept of the life of the hereafter, will remain hidden under a veil for them. Because these concepts exist, whatever Quran is pointing, all this exists as a fact. And to understand that fact, all of us are given those potentials as well. So these potentials are within ourselves. But if we do not bring out those, then we cannot make use of these facts which are put forward by the Quran. They will live life as if it ends with physical death. They simply cannot acquire that self, the details of which are signposted in the Quran. Despite death being a fact of life, we seldom question its significance and take it as the end of our life. And this is very interesting, that despite the fact that death is a fact, all of us who are on this planet in 2024 are going to die at some point in time in the future. But we will see that hardly any discussion, any arguments, any reasoning is discussed that what lies beyond that. Why do we die? And everyone accepts it as a fait accompli that this is going to happen. So with every passing day, people are getting closer to death and at the same time are fearful of death. In the religious domain, we leave it to the mercy, forgiveness, and love of Allah our God. The functioning of the law of requital holds the key to coming to terms with this great reality of our life. Now, over here, what I've done is I've quoted from one page of the life in the hereafter. What does the Quran say? Actually, I was going through this book for finding out a few other things regarding the hereafter, and then I saw these passages and I thought these should be shared among ourselves in this meeting. Life, after evolving and progressing over a very long period of time, has ended in the creation of man. So there is a very, very deep kind of reflection we require, that why are we created? Why did Allah go to that extent to create man with a choice and intent, and knowingly that this man who is being created will create problems in the world if it remains unguided? Now man has been given an opportunity to live his life within the divine laws and thus make himself capable of being able to live in the next evolutionary stage of life. Now think of the man who wastes this opportunity and does such a loss to his self of which there is no chance of salvage. Very important for us to pause and reflect, because we go through this life with a lot of fear and huzn and misery, and we see a lot of imbalance in the world. We are worried about Palestinians, we are worried about other wars, and we also take notice of misery in the world and poverty. And still, if we do not take opportunity to follow the Quran and then get best out of it, and when the opportunity is given to us that you can establish the system of Deen, then it means that we are not fully conversant with the importance of our own life. If life were to end with death, then man could live it as he wished, and all his affairs would have been ended with death. If it was a fact that life will end with death, then the whole universe, whole of our creation is meaningless. It means nothing. And Allah does not create things which are meaningless. They have a purpose. And haq means that everything has to bring out something constructive out of whatever Allah has created in the universe. But when life has to evolve and progress further, and man is going to be alive there and possess self consciousness and intellect, and then witnesses with his own eyes what a great destruction he has purchased for himself, then neither will the destruction disappear, nor will there be an opportunity to solve it. So over here, Quran says that try to think and imagine that what will be life like if you do not have a developed self in the hereafter. And you thought life will end with death, but you are given another life. But that life, the work for that life should have been done in this physical world, and you failed to do it. Just think of this type of life and of this life being very long. How is this life going to be lived? From this, you will also see why the Quran gives so much significance to Iman, that is acquiring conviction in the next life. Because without conviction, human beings don't get up and do it. And why the stage of this word is so important. The one who wastes this life will be destroyed forever. So the points covered in this page is that life created by Allah is not meaningless. It has a purpose. And death is the first stage of our physical existence. And then we have to go forward into the life of the hereafter. The only thing which we have to do is to look at our own inner self and try to see that what kind of a self we possess and how do we use our choices and intent so that we are able to develop ourselves to that extent which becomes an evidence in itself that it is going to live in the hereafter. Now over here I've drawn a schematic, two clearly signposted paths of human life, and this is based on the Quran. Now three pictures I put in over here of crowds, and each one of them, this is I think some kind of a sports stadium. This is people going through a street, and this is another, I think, some protest taking place. And all these human beings, each one of them possesses a self. And we should stretch our imagination that how many of them are aware of the guidance of the Quran, and how many of them are really seeking guidance so that Allah can guide them towards the Quran. We are born and then mostly conform to the majority around us. So if we have created a world which is totally committed to man-made laws, then human beings born in that world are going to conform to the same system. And that makes our job very difficult or very challenging, who are the students of the Quran. And what happens is that these physical human beings who haven't recognized their self and its ability to be able to develop further and not guided by the Quranic value system, that is the permanent values, then they are simply aging. Doesn't matter how big scientists they are and scholars they are simply aging, and then they will die. Physical death ends our life in this part of the universe. Body has completed its function. Now, the aspect to which the Quran is drawing our attention is that you have a self, or we have a self. And whole of this physical body is given to us so that as the body is aging and coming to an end through this death process, we gain new life through the Quran, and the path of the Quran, sense of self emerges, self-development through the Quran, and this should be focused on the system of Deen. And through this, we acquire eminence and loftiness. And that is very important because this eminence and loftiness is not otherworldly. The Quran signposts this path throughout and tells us that how eminence and loftiness manifests itself through our deeds, through our thinking. And this aspect we have gone through some of our previous verses, and this aspect will keep coming again and again as we go through the Quran. And over here, I've quoted a verse from the Quran, La tarkubunna tabakan an tabakin. You will surely go from stage to stage. And this is a slow process. It cannot be achieved in one day. And we have to keep trying and keep making an effort that once we have made a decision that we will keep following this sirat, this path, which is given by the Quran, and we are not going to give up. Now, next verse 1750, resurrection is at the level of human self. Kul kunu hijaratan aw hadidan. In reply to the question of these people that when we will die and become dust and we become bones, how are we going to be resurrected? And over here, Quran has added to it by saying, say to them that if you become after death not only bones and dust, but even stones or iron. Because bones and dust is coming out of that human body. And Quran is saying that even if you become stones or iron, then you will be resurrected. Don't worry about it. Because at this stage, you are not paying attention to your own inner self. And what I've done is I've combined these two verses, 1751. Allah can create from nothing, human self will get another life. أَوْ خَلْقًا مِمَّا يَكْبُرُ فِي صُدُورِكُمْ فَسَيَقُولُونَ مَنْ يُعِيدُنَا قُلِ الَّذِي فَطَرَكُمْ أَوَّلَ مَرَّةٍ فَسَيُنْغِضُونَ إِلَيْكَ رُءُوسَهُمْ وَيَقُولُونَ مَتَىٰ هُوَ قُلْ عَسَىٰ أَنْ يَكُونَ قَرِيبًا. Or become some other thing whose becoming alive in your view is impossible. No matter what you become, you will definitely be raised up again alive. Because the universe is not created batil, but it is al-haq. At this they will say, who is it that will make us alive again? Interesting question. Say to them that same Allah who created you the first time when your bones even to the extent of dust did not exist. The way in which the dead can receive new life, the same way those Jamaats can receive fresh life in this world about whom you think that their reawakening is among those things which are impossibilities. So we should not only think of single individuals' resurrection after death, but in this life as well, those nations which go down and then if they follow the path of the Quran, then they again can get life. And we should keep in mind that the life which is defined by the Quran is different from the life which is defined by human beings without its guidance. Hearing this, these people will start to shake their heads before you and will ask, when will this happen? Say to them that, surprisingly, the time may be nigh. It might be very close by. Further elaborations of these two verses, 50 and 51. The Quran responds by stating that never mind bones or dust, even if you become iron and stone, the resurrection of every nafs in the next stage of life is as per the law. And that is where we forget that people think that this will be from nothing, and because they cannot see or they do not understand the laws working in the universe and within their own self, hence they are doubtful about it. The issue before you is that you do not make an effort to come to terms with the finer aspects of the divine law. This life is not sport and entertainment. It is created as haq, not as batil. And there are a number of verses on this aspect of sport and entertainment. Then the Quran responds to the human thought that who will bring us back to life? They don't wish to be resurrected due to fear of accountability. That is the deep thing, that human beings don't want to be held accountable. They want to follow their own desires, and particularly those people who are in power and are wealthier and the beneficiaries of the human man-made system. The Quran informs them that in physical death, at least some remnants of your body still remain. But just ponder on this fact that before your birth, there was nothing of you around, and yet you arrived through the process of biological birth. I put down this comment, whereas when the first human being was born through the process of evolution, then he or she arrived when they were nothing. Biological process was set in place later on. Who has set this process in place? The one who created this process of birth as per his law of Mashiach, can he not devise another process to bring you back to life again? And we should also look at the way the whole universe is created from nothing. So there are plenty of signs of this aspect that resurrection is a possibility. And this thing only remains in doubt until the time one has acquired that self to which the Quran is pointing our attention to. Few more comments. Here we need to bear in mind that Allah is not trying to convince these people about the continuation of life beyond death and the issue of their accountability, but through these verses, He is inviting us to strengthen our iman and to ponder on undiscovered facts related to our death and what lies beyond it. Once we understand it, then we can explain to others and leave it up to them to make up their own minds. If we relate this verse to regaining of life by death, by dead nations in this world, then we can relate their questioning of when will it be to this aspect as well. Whatever may be the case, as students of the Quran, we understand the laws functioning in the world and can figure out both aspects, i.e. individual as well as collective. Then the Quran notes the next response of theirs when they ask, when will this take place? The Quran responds by saying that this will take place very soon. Human beings, especially those in power and who possess wealth, think that their death is something which is far away, or they think that it will never occur. In the future, the Quran states, no, it is not that far off. And 100 years or 80 to 100 years is not a very long time in the grand scheme of things when we talk about the world and the universe in billions and billions of years. Continuing on this theme of these two verses, through this, the Quran provides reassurance to Mu'mineen that time passes very quickly, i.e. days turn into weeks, months, years, and physical life ends very quickly. However, for those who are on this path called Sirat-e-Mustaqim, this is not going to terminate with physical death. And that is the beauty of it, that once we have acquired that self and got and checked it through the signposts mentioned in the Quran, then our life gets onto a different path. Acquiring that self which has acquired new life, and the Quran says in one of its verses, Ya ayyuhallazina amanu stajibu lillahi walil rasule iza da'akum lima yuhyikum. O Jamaat Mu'mineen, respond to the invitation of Allah and His Messenger when He calls you to that which will give you life. And obviously this life, lima yuhyikum, is that life which we acquire after following the path of the Quran. Once acquired, this new life will provide all that to which the Quran invites our attention repeatedly. It's a totally different experience, and we know it on this platform that by going through various verses of the Quran and expanding these as much as possible according to our present level of understanding, that Quran gives us literally new life, and we can start seeing things to which we were oblivious previously. So we get a new consciousness. It is not otherworldly, but this word of Allah is still in His control. And we should never forget that Allah has not left this word entirely to human beings. There are laws working in it, and the fact that death will come to everyone means that Allah is still in control of His universe and this world. Just learn the procedure to acquire power through His clearly explained laws and values. The issue before us as students of the Quran is to know the procedures which are given in the Quran, and they are placed within our very easy reach. Death and what lies beyond it is only a mystery until we acquire this new self, and then by coming together, all parts of the puzzle of life start to fall in place, and the mosaic gradually starts to take shape right in front of our eyes. And we have seen that this mosaic, how it is developing and expanding with every meeting which we hold together. And in verse 2, 3, that is in Surah Al-Baqarah, it says it all, وَالَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِمَا أُنزِلَ عَلَيْكَ وَمَا أُنزِلَ مِن قَبْلِكَ وَبِالْآخِرَاتِ هُمْ يُوقِنُونَ. Those who have acquired Iman in the revelation sent to you and sent before you. And that is the beauty of it, that those who have acquired this Iman, what happens to them? That is the Quran, and thus have the reassurance of the hereafter, وَبِالْآخِرَاتِ هُمْ يُوقِنُونَ. As a consequence of going through the Quran, they acquire that self which gets an assurance of the hereafter. Because once we start working for the system of Deen, then the individual issue of the hereafter disappears, because individual issue of hereafter is confined to the world of religion, where everyone is working for their own salvation. Over here, it is a totally different domain. It's a totally different sphere of life. Some general comments on these two verses. The problems which we see in the world are created by those who assume that human life ends with death, and as a result possess that psyche which only concentrates on their own interests. The Quran calls this the state of egoism, haughtiness, self-pride, arrogance, self-projection. These are human default states, and we need to come to grips with these human limitations. When human beings do not hold themselves accountable for what they do, this leads to an increased fear of death. And we can look at this verse, and I think there are a few more verses in Surah Al-Baqarah, i.e., it impacts negatively on the human psyche. Because whatever we do, it affects our psyche, and fear of death exists at our psyche level. If we hold ourselves accountable and do saleh deeds, then we know that we are on the right path. We are on the straight path as defined by the Quran. Then that fear disappears. Iman and saleh deeds lead to the creation of a new life within us, and also gradually leads to eliminating the fear of death. The reason is that the developed self becomes an evidence of its having acquired eminence and loftiness in life. Those latent potentials start to manifest which are related to the good of mankind, and the system of Deen noted in the Quran becomes evidently manifested in front of us. It also leads to firmness and determination in character and outlook to remain on the path of Deen in order to solve human problems. And that is the crux of it. That why do we remain on this path strictly? Because not only for our own self-development, because we are fed up with the human problems created by the man-made systems. This understanding gains firm hold in our mind that the man-made system needs to be replaced with the system of Deen. One comes to this conclusion that without unity of hearts among Mu'mineen, the system of Deen cannot take birth. Next verse 1752, the sense of time is related to this physical world. Yawma yadukum fatastajibuna bihamdihi wa tazunnuna in labistum illa qalila. The day he will call you and you respond positively to his invitation, becoming the personification of appreciation and gratitude to him, instead of transgression and rebelliousness. The thought will come to you that the time which you have passed before this was not much, it was very short. And this kind of a feeling one develops towards the later part of our physical life, that it seems as if the previous life was a very short one. Further reflections on this verse. This verse could be taken as a response to those who display kufr, or this can be taken as a clarification for mu'mineen who may also think about it. The appearance of the term bihamdihi, that is, which is related to the appreciation and praise of Allah's creation, could mean those who know about the benefits associated with following the laws of Allah. Their response will, of course, be different from those who have no interest in the values and laws of the Quran. Here, the Quran has provided a true perspective of the past by stating that at the end of human life, it appears to the individuals as وَتَظُنُّونَ إِن لَبِثْتُمْ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. He conjectures that it was a very short period of time in the world. Time, in fact, disappears, and what all people mostly remember are the events and their role in them. And we experience it that sometimes it's difficult to remember the date or the month of that particular event, but we generally know the outline of that event from the past. It also points to the state of consciousness in the next life. From some verses of the Quran, it appears that in the next life, consciousness about time will be different when compared to this life. In any case, this time will not be of much use, because that life, if the Quran says, is an eternity where the self will keep progressing forward and there is no further death in the hereafter, then of course the sense of time will be different from what we experience in this life. It's quite an exciting concept, and we can stretch it in our own mind and think about it. From this, we can safely conclude that the significance of time in this life is related to our physical body, in order to know about the deadline of our physical death, because we got a limited time over here, something like between 80 and 100 years, unless due to some mishap one has died earlier. So for that time, we need some kind of time reference so that people are fully aware of it, that each passing day is a lost day if they are not on the path of self-development. 1753, guidance provided on our emotive conduct. وَكُلِّ عِبَادِي يَقُولُ الَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ إِنَّ الشَّيْطَانَ يَنزَغُ بَيْنَهُمْ إِنَّ الشَّيْطَانَ كَانَ لِلْإِنسَانِ عَدُوًّا مُبِينًا. O Rasool, say to these people who have accepted obedience to me that whatever you say, it should be in such a manner that there is beauty and balance in it, and it is extremely balanced and precise. Those forces which cause people to stray from the path of Allah are always trying to engender chaos and disorder among you. Hence, you need to remain vigilant regarding these. These destructive forces are the open enemy of man, even though they present themselves in very sympathetic garbs. And we can see that this whole thing is very carefully planned. That is, human life and their existence is very carefully planned, and how to watch finer details the Quran goes in its verses. Further elaboration, we have seen that while pointing to the pitfalls of our life in the world, the Quran also draws our attention to various solutions to these problems. Allah knows all the weaknesses and limitations with which each one of us is created, and also knows what kinds of problems and issues the unbridled human intellect, emotions, and desires will create. It means that the Quran should help us to understand these aspects, relate these to the world in which we live, and then guide us to come out of these problems in order to move towards Deen as a system. Because as we come to grips with our own psyche and its own default position, that is its limitations and weaknesses at the fundamental level, and then grow out of it, then Quran helps us to guide us towards higher and higher eminence and loftiness, where we can see the system, the possibility of the system of Deen, which can be established even in a short lifespan of an average human being. After pointing to some of the behavior and conduct of those people who dislike the Quranic guidance and are all out to oppose Mu'mineen, here we are asked to say what is balanced and positive. Saying here will represent our thinking, words, and deeds. Then we are cautioned to not take this instruction lightly, because if our base desires are not checked and regulated in the light of the permanent values, this will lead us towards creating problems for ourselves as well as others. We might think while going through these verses as if Quran is creating some kind of a stress for us. Not at all. If we look at it, that this is the procedure and process for the establishment of the system of Deen, and in this our self is also a beneficiary in it. All those who have come together, all of their selves are beneficiary in it. And if we bring into mind the life beyond death, then all these stresses disappear and we create a very high level of motivation within us. Continuing on this verse 1753, here the Quran then expounds its guideline by stating that Shaitan will sow seeds of dissension among you. And we know Shaitan over here means human unbridled base desires. And this will lead to chaos and conflict in society. We simply cannot avoid noticing the ill effects of this kind of psyche in the human world. Acquiring Iman in order to identify and overcome these satanic proclivities and inclinations is part of this understanding. Without coming to terms with the default human psyche, we simply cannot stay motivated in this path called Sirat-e-Mustaqim. This is why the Quran has noted a number of supplications in order to make room for these desires within our deeper psyche. I put down this comment because all those supplications which are given in the Quran, we will see that these relate to some aspect of our own psychology. Then the verse concludes by emphatically telling us, Inna shaitana kana lil insani aduwwam mubina. Shaitan is surely the one who creates wedges among human beings. This wedging is related to human cognitive dissonance, which leads to divisions in the outer world. So without the Quran, human beings cannot unite. They have to come to the Quran to unite. This is strictly against the unity to which Allah draws our attention repeatedly. If we are comfortable with divisiveness and its issues in the world, then the Quran will never benefit us. And this is why people who are divided, for example, into sects and into nationalities, and also all those aspects which are related to religion and politically as well, they are comfortable with that. And that is why they are not thinking of a higher guidance. They are not thinking of the life or possibility of a life beyond death. So as students of the Quran, we have to explain to them, we have to draw their attention to it, and then some will come to it, The others, majority, will not initially come. It is only once the system is in place, then they will be attracted towards the benefits of the system. Last verse for today's presentation, 1754. There are laws for everything in the universe. Rabbukum alamu bikum. In yasha yarhamkum aw in yasha yu'azzibkum. Wama arsalnaka alayhim wakila. Your Rabb is aware of all of your circumstances. If you function according to his laws, then he will provide the means of nourishment for you. If you go against them, then destruction will descend upon you. So everything follows laws, and these are made clear in the Quran. O Rasool, after making all this understood, then leave this matter up to them as to which path they wish to select for themselves. We have not sent you as a guardian over them, that you should make them tread on the correct path forcibly, so that you will be held accountable about their path. And Quran makes it very clear from beginning to end that human beings are free to make their own choices, and there must not be any compulsion in making those choices. Few more reflections on this verse. This verse opens with a powerful statement of fact when it states, Rabbukum alamu bikum. Remember, your Rabb knows you best. And we can see Rabb is used over here, which points to the system of Rububiyat. Why shouldn't he know us very well? The one who created us and then defined a goal for us together with guidance. The question for us is then, what am I doing in this world? And can the Quran help me to find my way from my physical birth to my physical death in this life? Can it help me, and I put down us as well because we are on this platform as together, to successfully get through all the possible pitfalls of my or our life? The response of the Quran is an emphatic yes to each one of us. It states clearly that ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. This is the reply to what is stated in Surah Al-Fatiha, where we are directed to the roadmap outlined for mankind. Because over here Quran says, this is Al-Kitab, this is the book in which there is no doubt. It removes your doubts and suspicions and conjectures. And Hudal al-Muttaqeen, this is a guidance for those who wish to become Muttaqi. And Muttaqi, we know that are those who follow the Quran and wish to avoid the pitfalls of life. After making it clear that your Rabb knows you best, the verse points to two aspects of the law of Mashiach of Allah. In order to understand the provision of Rahmat and to face the evil outcomes of our deeds, we need to understand the law of Mashiach of Allah. And law of Mashiach over here is that at a very fundamental level that we have a choice and intent, and whatever choices we make, the results will be according to those choices. We have a choice in life to follow course A or B, but we do not have a choice that we follow course A and get the results of B. And Quran has given us additional choice that if you follow its path, this path will take you to that destination of Sirat-e-Mustaqim which it promises. And that life will go beyond death. Physical death will not matter on this path. Continuing on this verse, though it appears that this verse is addressed to the messenger, however, it should be viewed by each one of us as being an addressee of this verse, because no more messengers are coming in the world, so each one of us is an addressee of this verse. At the end, a great statement of fact is made which helps to understand the human psyche in relation to accepting or rejecting Quranic guidance. It is stated for all times that وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ عَلَيْهِمْ وَكِيلًا, you are not sent as a guardian to dispose of their affairs in life. How easy this makes our life, that we are only responsible for ourselves, and of course by coming together we are responsible for the system of Deen. If people want to join it through their free volition and follow this path, they are welcome. If they don't want, or they want to quit on the way, then it is their choice and we shouldn't worry about them. We should not give any space in our mind to them that I wish they had stayed here, when we know that it is beyond our control. Even Allah doesn't want to guide those who do not seek guidance. Despite knowing the consequences of not following the Quran, one has to learn to respect the choice of others. Very important, we must respect the choice of others. The Quran has declared that in the matter of Deen, it has very clear said, La ikraha fi Deen, there simply cannot be any compulsion in the matter of Deen, in the matter of people making their own choices, how to live this life. i.e., from outside as an external force or an internal persuasion due to some circumstances. For example, if people accept Iman because there are some benefits attached by being with Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen, or for example, tomorrow the system of Deen comes into place in some land on this planet, and people accept it because they want to benefit from those benefits, then they don't have that Iman. And Quran has pointed to this weakness in human beings. And we should have procedure in place to judge people from that point of view, not to punish them, but know it, because we have to give them positions of responsibility to run the system. And those whose conversion is under some kind of a compulsion, not through their own freedom to choose, are of no use to manage that system. That system will fail if we include those people at the top who have to run the system according to the book of Allah on behalf of Allah. People need to accept the message based on their own choice through their own rational thinking and reasoning. We should just present the guidance rationally based on reason and evidence. And all these things are important that should become the psyche or part of our psyche, so that we get ready with every passing day for the system of Deen. Thanks for your time and for sharing this today. Please feel free to share it with your contacts. You may like to subscribe for future talks related to the Quranic system of Deen. Thank you.